In a quiet neighborhood, as the sun sets behind peaceful homes, a black woman walks home from her job, looking tired but content. But tonight, what seems like a simple walk will quickly turn into a nightmare. As she strolls down the sidewalk, a police car pulls up beside her, and a tension-filled moment unfolds. What starts as a routine stop by an officer is far from ordinary. In this video, you'll discover the shocking truth behind the officer's actions and the hidden power that lies just beneath the surface. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you speechless. One moment of injustice leads to a stunning reversal that shocks everyone involved. This story isn't just about a confrontation, it's about power, revenge, and the unexpected consequences of crossing the line. We'll also dive into lesser-known facts about law enforcement accountability and what happens when the tables are turned. By the end of this video, you'll understand why holding those in power accountable is more crucial than ever, and why this twist in the story is something you don't want to miss. As the woman approaches her front yard, her footsteps slow. The street is eerily quiet, with only the soft rustling of leaves in the air. But then a car's engine hums behind her, breaking the stillness. She glances over her shoulder, her body tensing as a police car pulls up alongside her. The officer behind the wheel is no stranger. His reputation for controversial and often racist actions precedes him. Known for stopping people of color without cause, his presence alone raises alarm bells. The car comes to a stop just a few feet away, and the officer steps out, his boots crunching on the gravel as he walks toward her. And said, "Hey, I need to see your ID." The woman freezes for a moment, confused. No reason has been given, no crime committed, yet here he is standing before her demanding information. She's never been stopped like this before, and his tone makes it clear this isn't just a routine check. She stands still, unsure of what to do, her eyes darting around for help, but it's just her and him on this quiet street. "Officer," said, "I'm asking you to show me some ID. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." She instinctively takes a step back, her discomfort growing. The officer, however, doesn't seem to notice or care. He steps forward again, invading her personal space, his presence looming over her like a shadow. The closer he gets, the more intense the situation feels, and she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. His eyes never leave her, and she feels his gaze weigh heavily on her. She knows she doesn't have to comply without reason, but the tension is palpable. She can sense the power and balance the authority he wields without justification, and it makes her heart race. Something in the air feels off, but there's nowhere to run. The officer stands too close now, his breath almost brushing against her skin, his hand hovering near his holster. The woman takes another step back, trying to create some space between them, but he doesn't move, keeping his posture firm, unyielding. The silent threat of escalation looms. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. What exactly has she done to deserve this treatment? But as she looks around, she knows the answer isn't coming from anything she's done. It's coming from the officer's history, his biases, and it's becoming more and more clear that this stop was never about enforcing the law. The woman takes a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, and looks the officer in the eye. Her voice is calm yet firm as she asks, "I don't understand. Why are you stopping me? I haven't done anything wrong." Her question lingers in the air, but instead of a reasonable explanation, the officer's expression hardens. His jaw tightens, and the subtle shift in his demeanor tells her this isn't about following protocol anymore. He's testing her. "I told you already, I need to see your ID. Don't make this more difficult." He snaps, his voice rising. As she stands there trying to process the situation, the officer steps closer. She instinctively takes a step back, but he mirrors her movement, closing the distance between them. The air feels thicker, now charged with an unspoken tension. This wasn't just a routine stop, it was becoming a show of force. Without warning, the officer reaches out and grabs her arm, his fingers curling around her skin with a firm grip, pulling her just a little too hard. The unexpected contact sends a jolt of shock through her, and she jerks her arm away, her eyes widening in disbelief. Her breath catches in her throat, and she steps back again, visibly uncomfortable, but trying to stay calm. Her heart races her mind, screaming to fight back, but the fear of what might happen next keeps her from doing so. The officer takes another step forward, his hand still hovering in the air, as if waiting for her to comply. The moment feels like it's stretching on forever, and she can feel the weight of his presence bearing down on her. "You don't have to make this difficult. Just do as I say." He smirks, his words cutting through her like a sharp blade. She stands her ground, her discomfort palpable, but refuses to let it show. Everything about this interaction feels wrong, from the officer's tone to the way he's invading her personal space. His touch, his proximity, all of it is crossing boundaries she never expected him to cross. Still, she tries to remain calm, her thoughts swirling with confusion, anger, and fear. How could someone sworn to protect and serve her treat her this way? How far will he go before she's able to escape this suffocating moment? The officer doesn't seem to notice her hesitation as anything but weakness, and he closes in again, his hand still too close, his gaze narrowing. But in that moment, she knows that this isn't just about the stop anymore. It's about power, his abuse of it, and her determination to reclaim hers. As the officer continues to tower over the woman, his presence feeling more threatening by the second, a distant sound breaks the tension, the unmistakable roar of an engine approaching. She doesn't notice it at first, too focused on the officer's actions. But then the car pulls up with a sense of authority that makes the officer pause. The headlights cut through the dimming light, and the sleek black police chief vehicle rolls to a stop just behind the officer's car. The woman glances over her heart, suddenly skipping a beat. She recognizes the vehicle immediately. It's her husband's. He's the one person in this moment who can make all of this stop. She feels a wave of relief mixed with a pang of anxiety. She knows what's coming, but she doesn't know how the officer will react. The car door opens and out steps a man in full uniform, a stern, no-nonsense figure. Her husband. His sharp gaze scans the scene, immediately taking in the officer's position, the way he's standing too close to her, the palpable discomfort in the air. He doesn't rush toward them, but instead, his eyes lock onto the officer with the intensity of someone who holds the power to make things change in an instant. The officer, still standing near the woman, doesn't notice at first. He's too focused on the woman in front of him, too caught up in his own misguided authority. But then he turns slightly, sensing the shift in the air. His eyes fall on the man in uniform, and the blood drains from his face as the realization hits him. The person standing before him is not just any bystander. He is the very man whose authority he answers to. The woman's husband stands tall, unflinching, his expression serious. Every step he takes toward the officer sends a clear message. This is no longer a situation he can control. The officer shifts his weight nervously, suddenly aware of the immense power that now looms over him. The silence stretches for a moment, thick with tension, as the two men lock eyes. There is no need for words, yet the power dynamics have shifted, and the officer knows that the woman's husband is the one person who can end this now. His stance grows more rigid, and his gaze flickers from the officer to his wife, who stands a few feet away, still shaken, but slowly regaining her composure. The husband steps forward slowly, each movement deliberate and unhurried. There is no sign of anger in his demeanor, just a quiet, unshakable authority that fills the space around him. His uniform is pristine, his badge catching the last of the fading light, a clear symbol of the power he holds. The officer, still standing near the woman, glances nervously between the two, his body tense as he senses the change in the atmosphere. With each step the husband takes, the officer's confidence starts to waver. He stands his ground, but it's clear now that he is facing something far greater than just a confrontation with a woman on the street. When the husband reaches a few feet away, he stops, his eyes locked onto the officer with the steady gaze of someone who knows the full extent of his authority. The officer's nervous energy only increases. He shifts his weight, uncomfortably unsure of how to handle this new development. The husband doesn't raise his voice, doesn't make any grand gestures, but his presence alone makes the officer feel small and powerless in comparison. "I don't think you understand," the husband says, his voice calm but firm. "I am the police chief here." The words hit like a punch, and the officer freezes, his face draining of color. His eyes widen in disbelief as the full weight of the situation crashes down on him. For a moment he's paralyzed, unable to react or speak, his mind racing to process what has just been revealed. This isn't just a routine stop. This is the one person who has the authority to undo everything that has just unfolded. His chest tightens, and he looks around as if searching for a way to take back his actions, but it's too late. The husband doesn't need to say anything more, but he does, his voice steady and unyielding. "You've just crossed a line that you won't be able to come back from." The officer stumbles for a response, but the words catch in his throat. His posture slumps as the realization settles, and his careless actions are about to cost him far more than he could ever have anticipated. He looks at the woman's husband, and for the first time, he seems to understand the full extent of the mistake he's made. His bravado has vanished, replaced by the cold, hard truth that he has just put himself in a position that could end his career. The husband's voice cuts through the thick silence, firm and commanding. "Step aside," he orders, his eyes never leaving the officer. There's no room for argument, no hesitation in his tone. The officer, still frozen in shock, seems momentarily stunned by the directness of the command. His gaze shifts from the husband to the woman, and then back again, as if trying to process what's happening. But there's no time to react, no time to recover from his realization. The moment of reckoning has arrived. As the husband's words settle in, the sound of approaching sirens can be heard in the distance, growing louder by the second. A second police car pulls up, followed by another, and soon more officers are on the scene. They arrive quickly, their eyes immediately assessing the situation. When they see the officer standing rigidly, his face pale and his posture slouched, it's clear to them what's happened. Without a word, they move in, surrounding the officer with the efficiency of a team that knows exactly what to do. One of them gently places a hand on his shoulder, guiding him away from the woman. The officer's face is a mix of confusion and humiliation, his body stiff as he's escorted off the scene. His eyes dart around, but he doesn't make eye contact with anyone. His head hangs low, the weight of his actions now fully sinking in. He tries to speak, but the words get caught in his throat, swallowed by the realization that he is now the one under restraint. The other officers don't look at him with anger or malice. They just move swiftly, their actions reflecting the gravity of the situation. The officer is led to one of the patrol cars, his hands cuffed his face, a portrait of shame. He doesn't fight back, doesn't attempt to explain himself. The air is thick with the understanding that what's unfolding is not just a consequence, it's justice in its most immediate and unavoidable form. The husband stands a few feet away, watching the scene unfold with an unwavering expression. He doesn't need to say anything more. The justice is being served, and it's clear that no one is above the law, not even those who are meant to enforce it. The officer, now being escorted away by his fellow officers, looks lost, disoriented by the sudden shift in power. His career, his reputation, everything he took for granted is now slipping through his fingers, all because of his own choices. As the officers drive away with the disgraced officer in the back of their patrol car, the street slowly falls back into its quiet rhythm. The woman and her husband stand together, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. The tension that had weighed so heavily on her is now beginning to lift, replaced by a quiet relief. She looks up at him, her face softening as she takes a deep breath. Without saying a word, she reaches out and places a hand on his arm. The gratitude in her eyes is clear, but she doesn't need to say much. A small smile forms on her lips, one that speaks volumes. "Thank you for being here, for protecting me, for making things right." The husband's expression softens as well, a rare warmth breaking through his usually stern demeanor. He nods quietly, his eyes still scanning the scene for any lingering traces of tension. But when he looks back at his wife, there's a quiet pride in his gaze. They don't need words to convey everything they're feeling this moment, their bond and the justice that's been served. As they turn toward their homes side by side, the weight of the evening finally begins to lift from their shoulders. The quiet of the neighborhood wraps around them like a comforting blanket, and with each step, they leave the chaos behind. They walk together slowly, as if savoring the peace that's been restored. Justice, though quiet, speaks louder than any words. Their footsteps echo in the silence, a powerful reminder that even in the most subtle of moments, the fight for what's right can be felt. In a world where injustice still lurks, standing up for what's right can change everything. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real events, persons, or situations is purely coincidental. It is intended to entertain and raise awareness about important issues, but it is not based on actual occurrences.